Good evening. Thanks for watching TV Houston. Once again, we are here in front of you at the same time every Wednesday between 7:30 to 8:30. And our program is Diversity Talk. Diversity Talk is sponsored by Diversity Political Coalition. That is a nonpartisan, and we do not, again, take sides and everything. But what we do have today is we have some special guests. I have Mr. Len Swanson, returning guest, as the Getty Group CEO, and also he is also the co-chair of the Texas for Trump.
And I have also now Harris County Deputy Registrar for Voter Registration.
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
So are you.
Yes, I am. Yes, thanks so much. And on my left-hand side, I have Mr. AJ Durrani, and he is a super delegate from DNC, and also he is also a chairman of Islamic Education Institute in Texas. So welcome to both of you, and welcome you to our show, Mr. Durrani, and welcome once again. Okay. Today we have a very kind of touchy topic to talk about. But first of all, since Mr. Durrani is here, we're going to go ahead and discuss the voter registration and the policies and everything that, first of all, yes, before we go into all of these details and everything, I would give you about 30 seconds to talk about yourself, if you want to introduce yourself to our viewers.
My background, when you come to think about it, is something that usually does not end up in politics as I have. My background is I'm a petroleum engineer. And I worked for Shell for 34 years. I'm retired.
Correct.
After having worked for a large company for a long time, you have the time to do what you want. And I basically work with nonprofits. But my major activity right now is with the Democratic Party. I'm at the present time something called a committeeman for the Texas Democratic Party in this area, which is West Houston, Fort Bend County, and Brazoria. And I'm called NSDC, State Democratic Executive Committeeman. But at the Democratic State Convention last weekend at San Antonio, I was elected to the Democratic National Committee. That's a super delegate. Yes. I will be a DNC member for the next 4 years.
Congratulations for that, and I witnessed that, and I was there.
And you were there, and you saw the openness in which these elections were held. There was nothing in a dark room with smoky room, and decisions were made. Everything is open. Voting is absolutely done.
And we took many pictures, and we have the recording of that as well.
Thank you very much for being there. Thank you for encouraging. This is, by the way, the first time that an Asian American has been elected to the DNC from Texas. There's never been one before.
I was going to mention that, but I'm glad you did. That's very good.
Since I'm a Muslim by faith, I'm also the first Muslim elected to the DNC. And I guess it shows the diversity of the Democratic Party right now in Texas, people like myself are getting there. But it's been because I have been involved with the Democratic Party in leadership position for the last 10 years.
Yes. Plus, I also know that your non-profit organizations that you're involved in and the foundations that you're involved in, that you guys had provided about 500,000 Muslims, their listing of that.
We have been the only organization, that's Emerge USA, of which I'm co-chair, founder co-chair, has been provided a list of Muslims who are US citizens, voting age, not children or visitors or green card holders, but US citizens who are not registered to vote. The number over 500,000. Would you like to guess or hazard a guess how many are there in Houston, in the greater Houston area?
From 500,000, I don't know, you tell me.
There are over 50,000.
Oh my God, that's a big number.
That's a huge number. So look at the target that a person like you and like you, sir, have to be able to go ahead and mobilize them for voter registration.
Yes, and we all, that's what...
Mobilize their minds in the right way.
Well, as you know, we do this thing nonpartisan. Emerge USA is a nonpartisan organization.
Yes.
And it has been provided this solely because it's nonpartisan without having to lean on people.
Yes.
As a deputy registrar, we know that it is a nonpartisan registration process, and there again, it is encouraging our citizens to be a part of the process and the solution.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been a deputy voter registrar now for the last 8 years. So I am involved in voter registration because it's the first step.
Right.
But frankly, if you just stop at voter registration, it's not, because you've got to get those folks out to vote also.
Yes. Exactly.
So the processes of education through starting with voter registration, but then obviously providing them the information so that they can.
Well, this year the election is going to be very, very interesting because, as we already have discussed in last couple of shows, that the division it's very weird this time. It's very funny.
It's very clear.
It's yes, but it's very different this time because there are a lot of people that feel strongly about the Hillary Clinton that they're thinking that she's a champion, she's the winner, and she is definitely going to be the first woman president of this country, and they're definitely supporting her for very reasons. And at the same time,
she gets indicted.
Same time, there are a lot of people who are very much convinced that Donald Trump is going to be the best choice for them because he doesn't come from the political background, but he's a very smart businessman. He have done business overseas with different countries and have dealt with those businessmen, so he know how to negotiate, and he's straightforward, and they have their own reasons because a lot of people, even if they file a registration and they are registered to vote, they just don't go out and vote.
This election is that what you're going to see come out, par none from what you saw in the primaries, the GOP is going to take a more defined pathway of educating on the clear and concise differences between our party and the DNC or the Democrats, and the clear choices that they're going to have. But that's going to be education. But we are also looking at facilitating getting the people to the polls.
Yes, I was going to ask you, since you are the co-chair of Texas for Trump, what is the GOP party? Is it still with you, or is it still?
It's that once we cleared the hurdle, and we cleared the other 16 wannabes, as we demonstrated that, as was also witnessed in Europe, that the elite had discounted we the people. And we the people are very visceral and very angry because we've been ignored. And especially from a veteran standpoint, you're going to see some very dynamic accountability for both sides of the aisle because they have not met our needs. And so going forth, the GOP has coalesced together. You could see by the statements by our chairman Priebus and of course our leaders like McConnell and even Ryan, but even begrudgingly, but still, the main leadership is understanding if we're going to win in November, we cannot be a house divided. And of course, what you got to witness on Saturday when we did our thing for within Harris County registrar, that Governor Abbott has made a distinctive goal to step in and really show the nation what Texas can do. So you're going to see some very defined programs coming out, and of course, with my military leadership and guidance and my background from Chicago, we will show a new day. But
great.
Not a visceral, very visceral, but an organized. At the bottom line, it's who organized the best at the end of the day and who can get their voters to the poll. And so that's where we are taking the steps that we're taking right now to get our voters to the poll.
Yes. So for the same question, I'll put it off for you as well. As a super delegate of DNC, what are the measurements or what are the steps that a Democratic Party is taking to gather and organize the people who would come and give them the right education so they can make up their mind?
Well, definitely voter registration is the first part. Most of the minorities, and when minorities, I basically am talking about ethnic minorities, Hispanics, of course, are now in very large numbers in Texas. They are not registered to vote. And that's going to be a big effort to get them to register to vote. Now, I have no doubt, without getting into the politics of Democrat or Republicans, you already know there's a general feeling that the vast majority of Hispanics are going to go Democratic. So from that respect, we don't have to quote unquote spend as much time educating them because they've already been educated, unfortunately or fortunately, through the Republican primary process. But the main thing is to get them registered to vote. And
so
I gave
are we
the example.
doing something?
Yes. It's not going to be an ad hoc. like some people like me who have been doing voter registration for a number of years, we know that one person or two people or 10 people cannot do it. And registration is important. You have to be where the voter is. You can't say to a voter, oh, we're doing voter registration, so come over at this location, which happens to be 5 miles or 10 miles from where they live. So you do voter registration mainly in the apartment houses, apartment complexes where they are. You go to Walmart, you go to the shopping areas, you go to Fiesta, you set up a table, and they allow you, because this is all nonpartisan. It doesn't say which way you go. But you register them to vote, but the part that is important is then you follow up. Now, you cannot make a copy of their registration card. That is by Texas law not permissible.
Correct.
But you can keep a note where you can take their name and their phone number and address and follow up with them later on to make sure they've got their voter registration card, and then try and see if they know where they're going to be voting in November.
So which location they'll be going and guiding them.
Guiding them. Texas has a great system of early voting where you can vote anywhere in the county. But on election day, which many people put off to voting, almost 50% vote on election day, and now they scamper because they don't know where to vote, and they can only vote in the precinct where they are.
Right.
But Houston is expanding so much, the precincts are changing.
And that's where education comes in, and organization, and providing the transportation. We're getting ahead of the game this year.
See, but how would they know what precinct that they belong to and where do they need to go? Because half of the time what happens is they make a mistake and they go to the wrong location, and then they turn out, okay, this is not where they can vote, and then they just lose their momentum, and they just,
But there's where being part of the churches, being part of the major organizations that has the voice of the people is the key. It's always been the key. So if you're working through those organizations, they're the ones that are maintaining that ongoing contact and organizing where there's going to be pickups with buses to take them to voting. So that is going to be the key. And that's something that we learned in Chicago many, many years ago. And so now we have a governor that is listening and is going to, at least from our side, facilitate.
Okay, thanks. Let's take a break and then we'll be right back. We'll be right back. Welcome back to TV Houston, Diversity Talk. And Diversity Talk is sponsored by Diversity Political Coalition, and we are nonpartisan. That's why we have the supporters from the Democratic Party and also from the Republican Party as well. And we were discussing about the voter registration. And while we were on the break, Mr. Durrani had mentioned something about being the precinct chair or the president.
Right. The
so
precinct
let's talk
chair
about that.
Is the lowest level of elected office in either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And what is a precinct? A precinct is a neighborhood or an area where you could have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people living. The one thing about being a precinct chair, and I've been a precinct chair now for 10 years, and that allows me to know the constituents within my precinct, is that I'm also the election judge. So on November 8th, when elections take place, when people come to vote, they'll see me behind the table where I'll be discussing with my election workers how the elections are going. And if you work on voter registration, you register somebody to vote, and then they see you in the election booth when you come to vote. That develops a bond with them, and whether they are Republican or they are Democrat. Because when you're an election judge, you can't be partisan. It allows you to work with the person and make sure they become a regular voter. They become a repeat voter rather than just register to vote in one election and then forget about it.
Yes, very, 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 very good idea.
So the Asian community, which has not participated previously, has now started to become precinct chairs, especially in Fort Bend County, where we are a larger percentage of the population than elsewhere. But even in Harris County, 10% of the Democratic precinct chairs happen to be Asian Americans, even though our population, of course, is nowhere close to 10%.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's a good information.
And that's exactly the same for the GOP. It begins at the precinct level, and you have to coalesce within your neighborhoods, build the bonds, and have regular mini town halls, and also making sure that, of course, from our standpoint of making sure that our House members show up.
Yes.
And have a
Speaking about
voice.
the town hall, and we were discussing earlier of having a governor for our town hall,
Correct.
GOP town hall.
Right.
Yes.
That is something that is being discussed, and we'll have confirmation on that. But I have put in a request because of what we know our GOP platform is going to be about, with a heavy emphasis on infrastructure stimulus and workforce development, and with the coalitions that we are doing with the different diversity groups, and in addressing the vast unemployment that's here. I mean, if you talk about the African community, you've got over 50% of the Africans from 25 to 50 unemployed. Well, there is a pathway for that. And so we know what needs to be done, but we've asked the governor to come here for a town hall, to meet with the diversity business leaders, political leaders, religious leaders of the Asian, Indian, African, and Latino communities. And we look to, at this stage, tentatively September 7th.
September 7th, wonderful. So since we're talking about, let me ask you a question that I had asked Mr. Durrani before. What is specifically the GOP, the Republican Party, is doing to get the attention of the Asian community or Indian community or South Asian community or let's say Latino community or African community down here in Houston? What are the specific steps that are being taken to grab that attention and also to organize them and also to facilitate them?
Well, like in...
Or to guide them, or to...
Well, you have to work through existing entities that exist on both sides of the fence. We have specific religious groups that even in the African American side of that was quite visible during the Bill King mayoral elections. You had coalitions of black ministers, Latino ministers coming out, and it's through them, and the same thing that we're now going to be doing through the Asian and Indian communities, that we reach out to them to have many town halls and get those that listen to them. You got to start working, and that is where then those that we have trained at these different groups, like what you were participating in this past weekend, it's going to only expand, because we also have the Trump organization, which was very dynamic and was a key component to the success that we're seeing here. We already have that grassroots operation. And you take that grassroots and you transcend it into your precincts, and you then work your neighborhoods, much like the DNC does too. But you're going to see us being a lot more organized than you've ever seen before, because of not just the nature of the election, but who is participating this time around. And we know that there's a lot at stake. So we can't afford to just sit back and think we've got it made when we don't.
Okay, yeah, that's wonderful.
I think one of the things that maybe talking about distinguishing between the two parties is that the Democratic Party has worked to try to work with the grassroots. A precinct chair is truly grassroots. You can't get him lower than a precinct chair. But at the same time, a person like me who started off as a precinct chair has worked myself up to become a member of the DNC at the national level, where most of the DNC super delegates are congressmen, U.S. senators, governors, heads of parties. But they also give an opportunity for people who are working at the grassroots to work their way up. By doing so, yes, when I go and I work in the Indian community or the Asian community, at any level, they can see, oh, this guy has made it to that level, maybe I can too. And I think showing that, working with them, will be, I think, a factor as you ask them to vote. I've asked them to vote for whoever they want.
Because they look up to you. And
they look up to you. The thing, though, is I would not have been in the DNC. Now, some people can get to that level. They make large contributions, obviously.
Correct.
But what makes it powerful is if you work your way up.
You had made a lot of contributions. You had made a lot of efforts to it.
Exactly. So you have to contribute as a precinct chair, be an election judge. I have been an election judge every single year for the last 8 or 9 years. Even though election day, I've always thought maybe I should sit at home and call people up, get them to vote. I am in the booth. I tell them, guys, this is not one day I'm going to canvass.
And see, that's also the difference with this year, in which we have major national operations because the veterans represent over 40 million votes nationwide, and because this is a very visceral accountability of Congress who has failed us, and a president that had failed us. We can't afford at a rate of 25 deaths a day because of what's going on. We have the organization, just even amongst the veterans, and that's why I'm here, because I'm one of those national voices that says enough's enough, and so we will be having at the grassroots, as you've seen, that it's starting to gel, but it's always been there. And the same thing with the GOP party, especially the Republican Texas party has had throughout it a very diverse woman caucus, a very diverse black caucus. There is also a Latino caucus that is in there. So it is not just that traditionally the DNC has had control of that, but here in Texas, because of it is Texas, we also have that roles and pathways, and because we have one of the largest military groups, we also have that element that is going to be very successful and very significant, and that's why we're coalescing this at the end of the day. But if you don't get out there and work them, much like AJ is talking about, and show your face and show that you do care, then you will have the apathy, and that's what we're trying to prevent, is the apathy, because this year, beyond any other election year, is going to be a very clear, defined definition between a Democratic Socialist and the Republican side. So which way do you want to go?
Correct.
That's what we got to say.
Nice. Since the Texas is a Republican state, a Republic state, and it has a lot of delegates and super delegate as well, what is the DNC, the entire party, Democratic Party, is doing specifically for the Latino community?
Well, there are no such thing as quotas in the Democratic Party, but there is an understanding that we need to bring along all communities. And I'll address your question about the Latino community in a minute. But we have in the DNC from Texas one position for a young person. We call it a youth seat. Anyone under the age of 36 can compete for it. And this year, the lady who was elected by the Youth Caucus and who finally became member of the DNC is a young Vietnamese. Again, first time that a nation has been elected. That's the kind of diversity which is not lip service. She will, at the age of 23, be in the DNC. Okay. Now, there are similar examples as far as Latinos are concerned. When I got elected to this new at-large seat, there are slots for a Latino man and a Latino woman. And a young lady, not quite as young as 23 years old, but activist who was in the same position as me, an SDC person, has been elected to go to the DNC to represent the Latino community also. And obviously in the Latino areas they do elect people. So if you look at the entire makeup, forget about the senators and the congressmen and the governors, but just the at-large members, they reflect the diversity of America. They are not just old men.
Right. Yeah.
You can still see the same thing in the GOP, in that because you have many.
My question to you was, as we heard from Mr. Durrani, that they are definitely taking some steps towards it to address the large community, because we all know that, I mean, Houston is a very diverse, and it's becoming almost the third largest city in the country, and having such a diverse community here, and a lot of people majority of them are Hispanic.
Right.
And the Asian community, the rate that it's growing, and at the growth that we are building up and bringing more and more people coming to Houston, and from Chicago, from New York, from California, from other cities, a lot of Asians are also moving to Houston, South Asians I'm talking about, am I correct?
Yes.
From India, a lot of Indian, a lot of Pakistanis, and there are different reasons for that. Weather could be one of them, and since Houston is the food city is another one, it's an oil city, and then there are a lot of other reasons that they have, because of the families are there, they want to reunite with the family and grow the business. It's a lot of business community that is growing up in Houston. So what exactly the measurements are or the steps are being taken by GOP to address them and to get their attention and to educate them about the party?
Well, there again, there is many other groups that a lot of people are not aware of. As an example, one of your major key groups here in the Latino community is the Republican Hispanics Citizens in Action, one of the largest and oldest Latino Republican groups, headed up by Bernadette McLeroy, affectionately known as Bernie Mac, who is a very dynamic voice within the Latino community. And when you really look at Latinos, they are entrepreneurs. And by nature, entrepreneur is a Republican, not a Democrat. All right, so it's a misnomer that the GOP does not have the support of the Latinos. The same thing with the African community. You have a very strong Republican federation.
Sure. Let's take a little break, and then we'll come back and we continue on that.
All right.
Okay. Welcome back to TV Houston, Diversity Talk. As we mentioned before, Diversity Talk is a nonpartisan. We do not take sides, but we do have 4 pillars with us. Number 1 is, of course, this television show. Through this show, what we try to do is reach out to you, the viewers, and get you involved with our show, because we have another pillar that is a voter registration. That's where we want everyone to come out and vote. And before you can vote, you can only vote if you do a registration. So if you don't know where to go and how to do the registration, we are here to help you. You can always reach out to us. And our political coalition also have the PAC, which is where you can also get involved and donate towards your candidate. And the 4th pillar that we have is we do rallies outside our studio. We're planning to have a rallies pretty soon where you can also come and listen to your candidates and listen to the supporters of the both sides of the parties and make up your mind before the elections. And this is what we are planning to do under the umbrella of political coalition. With that being said, I'm going to go back to you because you were discussing something and I had to cut you off. Apologize for that.
That's
Mr.
right,
Len, go ahead and what you were saying.
There again, the major thing that needs to be stressed is that the GOP is inclusive. We have major outreaches. One of our key components, who's one of my fellow Air Force reservists, is R.W. Bray, who is Texas Black Caucus Director, and is now part of the RNC, of course, going forth and bringing in the various diversifications. One of the largest groups here in Texas, which is here in Houston, is the Black Texas Federation for Republican Outreach, which is basically a group of black ministers that have coalesced together because of the conservative message that the GOP represents, especially taking back our communities, providing jobs, providing family values that our inner cities need to recapture on, because we all know what's happening with our inner cities. And if we don't bring back the family element, which is of course what this federation is about, and the GOP supports that, then our society is crumbling as we see. So there's many different things that is evolving. And there again, the Latino community, which is not just Democrat, because most of them are business owners, they're entrepreneurs. They believe in the GOP message. And regardless of what got espoused because of immigration and what Trump brought out, you still have the underpinning theme of growth and development, and you'll see that when we release our platform here after July 21st. It's going to be very dynamic.
Okay, wonderful. So, Mr. Durrani, since a lot of viewers are listening, and most of our viewers are from the Asian community, and that is, let me put you in a spot for a minute and say, let's say you are just a common person. You are the other side of the table, and you are interested in getting involved in politics, and you want to come out and help help, and you have not even registered yourself ever, but you do want to come out and help and volunteer, what is the process? How you got to be the super delegate where you're at the position, and where you started? And so just for common people know, this is what they have to go through.
Because my story is exactly that of another person who's involved. Over 10 years ago, somebody came to me and said, we want to do voter registration. I said, I don't want to get involved in mainstream politics. It's mostly corrupt. They said, no, will you please help us within the Asian community to register? You are organized, you work for a large company, and that's how it started. So for a person who's starting out, I would first say, register to vote. But the other part is, if you are involved politically by just registering to vote and voting every 4 years, you're not involved. And frankly, as they say, if you are not involved, you're on the menu. So get involved, and getting involved does not mean having to pay large sums of money for somebody's political campaign, but you can be what they call a precinct captain. A precinct captain is one level below a precinct chair. Precinct chair is an elected person who's got a title, but within any given precinct, there are several areas, and you can be a precinct captain for the neighborhood that you live in, for example. And that way you can mobilize people, you can talk to people, telling them why it's important to vote, where to go to vote. So be a precinct captain.
So how you become the captain?
You work with the
precinct
precinct
designation?
chair. The precinct chair.
Precinct chair.
So it's the role. So if somebody comes to me in my area and says, AJ, I'm interested in politics. How can I help you? And I'll say, come on, let's sit down, have a cup of coffee, and let me ask you, what part of town do you live in? If you are in my precinct, because I'm a precinct chair also, by the way. I'm a DNC member, but I'm also a precinct chair. I'll ask him if he's living in an area close to me or any other part of the area that I'm in. I'll say, okay, I'll see who's the precinct captain. If there's no precinct captain, I'll appoint him or her as a precinct captain. Or if they're interested, I'll find out if they're not in my precinct, is it possible they're in a precinct which is vacant? In both the Republican and the Democratic Party,
correct,
there are vacant precincts. And how I really got my start was that I became a precinct chair, was working as a precinct chair, and I asked people, what's the next step? And they said, next step is to become a state Democratic Executive Committeeman. Now there are 31 committeemen in Texas and 31 committee women, because there are 31 Senate districts. And there's no way that a person would get elected. So I found out that the Democratic Party allows people from the Hispanic community, the African American community, the youth community, the LGBT community, positions on the executive committee because they may not necessarily get elected. So I said, what about Asians?
Correct.
And they said, but the Asians are not really involved. And I said, we have been involved for a long time. How do I do this? They gave me hemmed and hawed, but finally somebody said, get yourself elected to the Rules Committee of the Democratic Party.
I see.
I did 10 years ago, went there, made a pitch in the last minute of the convention, and there was a Hispanic gentleman, he said, this man sounds sincere, let's go ahead and pass it.
Excellent.
They passed it from that point to today. It's a perpetual seat on the executive committee for 2 Asian Americans, a man and a woman. I, as president of the Asian American Democrats of Texas, I've got that position. Then, of course, I ran in my own area. So that is the gradation. And it can happen to anyone. It can happen to a petroleum engineer who has had no involvement in politics. I don't have a pedigree of being involved in politics since I was the age of 4 or 6 or 8 or some other people. It was much later in life that I was. And I think the vast majority of Asians who are immigrants over here but are hardworking and are involved in doing things, and they are educated.
Yes.
In the GOP, it's in our blood. You're born into it. But, you know, a little tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, it is a fact, but we are diverse. I mean, you'll find in the same considerations that at all levels, you have all races being represented. And it is really from the business communities that we find our leadership, and for them in turn to reach out within their groups. As you witnessed Saturday, you see the organization, you see the grassroots, you see the methodologies that is already being deployed. And the one good thing that we have more dynamic here is the size of the Trump organization that evolved here in Houston already has thousands of grassroots operatives, much like he's talking about precinct captains, but this is grassroots that had nothing to do with the party per se. It had to do with citizens that were just upset that their voices were never heard. They coalesced together, and of course natural leaders evolved, much like myself, to now with the type of training and platform that is out there, we're kicking off right now, as you know. And so both sides are well organized. At the end of the day is who has got the most dynamic messaging that the people can believe in and wrap their arms around in. And here in Houston, I see it as, first and foremost, workforce development, education, and certain religious factors of reclaiming our communities because of what we see in the decline. But primarily it's workforce and, of course, education. And of course, we know what the platform in there is: returning control of the education to the local and to the state, and not have it mandated like it has been under the Obama administration. So there's going to be a major change coming. So
yeah, let me ask you, so is there any kind of educational platform that being put in to let people get involved, just like I asked Mr. Durrani, the normal people, the general public, the common man can step out and say, okay, if I want to get involved, what is my next step? Okay, if they want to get involved with DNC, there's some steps, but there's somebody who want to get involved with GOP. So how are you reaching out to those people? Or let me reverse the question, how are they going to reach out to you and say, okay, I want to get involved, what's the next step?
Well, we've already done that, as you've seen. And of course, if someone is brand new, they can go to, in our case, Harris County headquarters.
Yes.
And with that is manned all through the week. And the same thing in every county. DNC has the same thing. You can start at your county chair, but also you can also go to your congressman's office as well to reach out and say you want to participate.
But that's only volunteer.
That's just but there again, as you've seen, we have already created that grassroots infrastructure that attracts others to come in. I mean, we have got already that going on, and that was by word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yes.
And of course, in the end of the day, it is the word of mouth. It's not putting out fancy publications and whatnot. It is your neighbor talking to the neighbor, reaching out and of like and common values within your neighborhoods. And that's where you got to concentrate. Well, grassroots means just that. Grassroots in the individual neighborhoods with the people that we've recruited to now go out and recruit others to educate, bring the fold, identify as we're going to with now that we're both we're all deputy registrars, and that we will be making comprehensive efforts to bring out the most voters that Houston has ever seen. And I think because of the nature of this election, that's going to happen. We're going to see more voters come out this election than we have in any other election. I'm looking for 70% this time around, not the 40% that we've typically had.
Okay, great.
Let me add a little bit about...
We can actually discuss that because we do have to take a little small commercial break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to TV Houston, Diversity Talk. Our program is nonpartisan, and we do have candidates from supporters from each party. We have from GOP, and we also have from DNC. And we were discussing some issues, but from this, our third topic, we actually wanted to talk about something horrific that took place last night in Istanbul. Once again, the 47 lives were lost, and 100-some lives. People were injured.
Over 200
people were injured.
In critical condition.
And yes, and it's keep happening every day that we're listening and we're hearing these things are happening all over the globe. One day or the other, there's something horrific comes up like this. And it's like, they are some groups, sometimes they take responsibilities and sometimes they don't, because we don't know actually who is doing that, what's triggering, and who is supporting and who is...
Well, there I'll disagree with you. We know who's doing it.
Well, see, the thing is, until and unless somebody comes out, some organization come out and take the responsibility, we don't know.
Yes,
we
ISIS came out that very minute as the attack was happening. ISIS admitted that, well, and
which
obviously,
one? The one at the Istanbul in
Istanbul.
Turkey?
ISIS came out immediately to declare that that was their operation, that they sent in 4 operatives, and because of Turkey's relationship in the war in Syria. And so we know for them to infiltrate people into Turkey is easy, all right? But the point of it is as was brought up by our CIA and everybody else, unfortunately, we've had an administration that has had a policy of disengagement. And Obama chose from the very beginning of his administration that he was going to disengage from the world, and that his policy of acquisition and thinking that you're going to be able to do it with a less aggressive stance, he failed to understand the root of what was going on in the Middle East, and that you can't, when you're dealing with an element like is happening because of what their disengagement in Iraq, which started many years before that, but precipitated Iraq and Syria in that hub, they misread the so-called Arab Spring, all right, in which the radical Islamic portion took that little group, and they springboard and took advantage of a power vacuum. When you pull a superpower like the United States out of it and we disengage, and we don't provide the leadership, we don't provide the means by which to keep those elements controlled, and more importantly, hold the governments and the leaders responsible, much like here, you know, if we're not going to have a religious war, the Muslim faith has to step forth, not condemn, but eradicate that part that runs congruent against our beliefs.
It's not a religious war, sorry.
No, it's not. No, I said to avoid a religious war.
The thing is, the United States can't go and occupy countries just because they want to do a government change.
I agree.
So it is time that we have to get out of those countries where we have gone to. Afghanistan, we've been there for the last 11, 12 years. It's about time that we withdraw. I agree with you, withdraw responsibly. What happened in Turkey last night has nothing to do with religion. It's the month of Ramadan right now. Why would a Muslim go out and kill all other Muslims? So to call this a religious war is unfortunately dividing people on the basis of religion, which is not.
Well, I agree, it's not a religious war, but it was ISIS that did it.
Whether ISIS did it, but ISIS is not doing it in the name of religion. It's just very easy to say, oh, it's radical Islam, or it's radical jihadism. These people are there geographically. They want to occupy a certain part of Iraq where there's a vacuum, which we created. We didn't have to invade Iraq. We didn't have to go in there to take out Saddam Hussein. I think everybody agrees with that. There may be some people who don't. We didn't need to do that. We did it, and now we are basically paying for it. There are ways to do it. Now, I have been to Turkey. I was in Turkey 6 months ago, in December. It's a wonderful place. It's a great place to go and visit. I can visualize there in the International Arrivals Hall where this happened.
Yes.
When we looked at it, I told my wife, this is exactly when we come out of the International Hall. What has happened there are people who are doing this who are crazy. These people are not religious. These are crazy people. It's not religion that says, oh yeah, go ahead and martyr yourself. Nobody will do it, especially during the month of Ramadan, which basically say you do everything that you can to pray and be good. All we can say is that we hope that in most places security is still maintained so that these crazy people.
I do agree with the security part, though.
The security part, and if you go to Turkey or you go to other places, Turkish are such great people. The Turks.
Mr. Durrani, Turkey, the Istanbul station, that airport is actually the 11th largest airport in the world, and they have a pretty good security. I was there last year, and I went through all that.
But you can't guard, as we all know, you can't against fanatics that are basically suicide squads. You can have as much protection as you want.
But that can happen anywhere.
Exactly, it can happen anywhere.
To any airport,
but if you don't have a network that can define that. And there again, where the United States has failed is not evolving the types of relationships that it needs to with the Muslim governments to create the network necessary to weed out these radicals, to weed out these thugs, you know, because they are criminal. They're not reflective of the Muslims in general.
But I do agree with Mr. Durrani that blaming to the whole religion.
No, we don't. None of us is blaming the whole religion.
And where did these thugs come from? Where were they before 2003? They were Iraqi citizens who were responsible for running a great country.
Right.
We went in there, we destroyed their government, we took over, we destroyed the government totally, we destroyed the army. There was no infrastructure left. So what comes in a vacuum? These kinds of elements.
So what you're saying is this is our own created
Of course, I mean, everybody would realize it's our own creation. Now, after having acknowledged that, what we need to do is to say, put together some security aspects, and I agree with you. When you withdraw responsibly in such a way.
But you don't facilitate and precipitate a Sunni-Shia conflict that's been going on for eons, let alone allowing Iran to come in and stir it up and mix it up. But we allowed the government, unfortunately, with their policies that basically diminished the old Republican Guard. The ISIS, the reason that they're so successful, if you really understand that, most of their military element, their leaders, are former Republican Guard military that was basically kicked out of the Iraqi army as basically payback between the Shias and the Shiites. And so, but since we controlled it, we allowed it. And there again, that was part of Obama's not understanding the vacuum that he was creating, even though our generals were telling him, whoa, back off, you're going too fast. This disengagement is going to create just exactly what happened. You created a vacuum. There was no one to stop it. And you had a force that was committed, but they were also upset because the Iraqi government was impressing them, and bottom line, they had no way of feeding their families. If you're not feeding your families, you're going to do what they did.
Yeah, but we started in the first place.
Yeah.
Why did we have to go in?
But what's
in
the solution to it?
The solution, obviously, is we can continue to say it was Obama's fault, it was Bush's fault. It was both their faults right now.
Exactly.
Frankly, what we need to do is to see how we can go back in there, not with troops,
What's
not
the
with
solution?
troops, with building the infrastructure. Like we did in Japan after the Second World War, like we did in Germany after the Second World War.
Well, unfortunately, in this case, we're doing what the Iraqis are doing right now, and that is we are facilitating them taking back their own territory. Now, we can't be worried about collateral deaths and damages because those that they're trying to weed out as much as the ISIS, you can't change their minds. You can't engage them back
because
in the communities.
Damage has already been done.
Damage is already done,
and
so it's going to, unfortunately, you're going to have to weed them out, and you can turn that in.
A country that is doing well economically rarely has this kind of a environment. When a country where there's no water supply, when there's very little,
no electric,
no
sharing of the wealth.
We should have been working on there rather than try to work in terms of government change, regime change. We should have been saying, let's see what we can do for the people. Win the hearts of the people. They don't care right now. All they can remember is in 2003, the United States invaded them and toppled Saddam Hussein, but the quality of life that they've had
hasn't changed.
I mean, it's worse right now. It's far worse than it was then.
It's also because we here in the United States, we drag those issues for too long, unnecessary as well, to create an issue or to build up upon that. Look at just a few weeks ago, there was this massive shooting that took place in Orlando. It took about I mean, we're still not recovered from there. Correct? And then look at the Istanbul, within less than 24 hours, and their airport is still up and running. That's what I'm trying to understand. What is that we're not doing right in this country, that we drag those issues and we go into the negative format, and then the positivity is not coming into the place, and we're not working as a united.
But there's also a difference in mentality when you're dealing with in the Middle East, where that unfortunately has been commonplace for too long, but they don't stop living. They don't go into a Iceland's mentality. They pick up the pieces. They increase their intelligence network to weed out these elements, these criminal elements.
And you think all of that is done within 24 hours?
Oh yeah, because there again, they were caught off guard.
So if the small country like a Turkey can do it, and we, the United States, are not being able to do it, because we have more brains.
I'm not so sure you have the right guy sitting over here to talk about how to take care of terrorism in the United States. I don't think we are there. We are political guys. We work in terms of educating people politically.
Right.
None of us are. You may, of course, you are a veteran, but none of us are here quite geared to say, okay, let's solve the terrorism problem in the United States.
It ain't gonna happen.
It ain't gonna happen.
Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because
so
of the mentality that we've got here.
We talk as a general public, as a normal people, what we think, because what we are thinking is that's what the rest of the world must be thinking about too. Because brain is a brain, right? So that's why sometimes we bring out those kind of issues. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, we're not the expert on it, and we're not here to judge or to give a guidance. Okay, this is our country should do. Of course, there are more educated and more experienced people are sitting and handling these things.
But there's also things that we can be doing smarter, and as Trump has said, and the GOP will take, much like is already being practiced in the Middle East, and this is what is a fallacy, is that in the Middle East, there is already bans against those areas where you've got the fanatics coming out.
Well, that's a that issue is never gonna we cannot
No,
finish
but there's a way that you control what enters in here, because you cannot vet them, and that is why you do not. From people coming from Syria, there is no way that you can vet them properly. And when it's already been stated that ISIS has already got 4,000 to 5,000, and all you got to do is take a look at what's happened in Europe, what's happened in Turkey, where you don't have the populations controlled. There's no way of vetting who's there. You can't bring them in.
I mean, next
you can say a call. I'm going to ban all Muslims.
No. You're right.
That kind of rhetoric and division doesn't.
And that is not going to happen.
See, what we can do is we can always discuss it at the other show, because that's all the time we had for this time, for today. And thank you so much for you to be here, Mr. Swanson, and thank you so much,
Mr.
Thank you very much. To be here and give your time. And that's all we had for today. Thank you for watching.